They called it the Sleeper Protocol. For 3,000 years, the galaxy believed humanity had been wiped out completely. The Confederation of Stars celebrated their greatest victory, erasing what they considered the most dangerous species ever to crawl out of a gravity well. Museums displayed human artifacts like trophies. Children learned about the Terran menace in history classes, safe in the knowledge that the nightmare was over. They were wrong. Deep in the void between galaxies, where no star's light had touched for eons, something ancient stirred. A machine the size of a moon, built by human hands in humanity's darkest hour, began to wake. Its creators had called it many things: Last Hope, Final Gambit, The Reckoning. But its official designation was simpler, more terrifying in its clarity: Earth's Vengeance. The galaxy that thought it had won was about to learn that humanity's greatest weapon wasn't their technology, their weapons, or even their legendary stubbornness. It was their memory. And their capacity for patience that spanned millennia. The Sleeper Protocol was ending. And, with it, the galaxy's 3,000 years of peace. Admiral Zektar of the Vorthan hegemony stood before the massive display screen in his flagship's command center, watching the impossible readings scroll across multiple monitors. His four eyes moved independently, a trait that had served his species well in their rise to become one of the galaxy's dominant military powers. Today, that same trait made it easier for him to process the contradictory data flooding his sensors. "Run the scan again," he commanded, his voice carrying the authority of someone who had commanded fleets for over 2 centuries. The junior officers at their stations complied without question, their tentacles dancing across holographic controls with practiced efficiency. The results came back identical. In the empty space between the Andromeda and Milky Way galaxies, something massive had just appeared. Not emerged from hyperspace, not decloaked, but simply materialized as if it had been there all along and reality had just noticed. "Sir," Communications Officer Yilka spoke up, her voice tight with concern. "We're receiving automated distress signals from 17 different sectors. The readings are consistent across all monitoring stations." Admiral Zektar's primary eyes focused on the main display while his secondary pair examined the tactical readouts. The object was enormous, easily dwarfing even the largest space stations ever constructed. Its energy signature was unlike anything in the Confederation's extensive databases, yet there was something hauntingly familiar about its design philosophy. "Bring up the historical archives," he ordered. "Cross-reference the energy patterns with extinct civilizations, focusing on pre-Confederation records." The ship's artificial intelligence, a biomechanical hybrid developed by the Krell Collective, processed the request in seconds. When the results appeared, a chill ran through Zektar's exoskeleton. "Sir," the AI's synthesized voice announced, 97% probability match with Terran technology signatures from approximately 3,000 years ago. The bridge fell silent. Every officer present had been raised on stories of the Terran War, the conflict that had nearly torn the galaxy apart before the combined might of the Confederation had finally eliminated the human threat. The humans had been brilliant, ruthless, and absolutely terrifying in their ability to turn any situation to their advantage. "That's impossible," whispered Lieutenant Vorhan from the navigation console. "The humans were completely exterminated. We made sure of it. Every world, every ship, every trace of their existence was catalogued and destroyed." Admiral Zektar had been there. He had been a young captain during the final assault on Earth's solar system, watching as the combined fleets of 47 species turned humanity's home system into a radioactive graveyard. He had seen the last human ship destroyed, had participated in the systematic hunting down of every human colony, every research station, every hidden outpost. Or so they had thought. The massive object in the void began to move. Not the slow, ponderous movement of a space station adjusting its orbit, but with the purposeful acceleration of a warship coming to life. Sensor readings showed power levels climbing exponentially, systems that had been dormant for millennia suddenly blazing with activity. "Get me a direct line to Confederation High Command," Zektar ordered. "Priority Alpha clearance. And raise our alert status to maximum. All ships in the fleet are to maintain defensive positions but do not, under any circumstances, approach that object." As his communications officer established the connection, Zektar couldn't shake the memory of humanity's final message, broadcast across every frequency as their homeworld burned. A human female, her face streaked with tears and smoke, had looked directly into the camera and spoken words that had haunted his dreams for centuries. "You think you've won," she had said, her voice steady despite the destruction around her. "You think ending us here, ending us now, means you're safe. But you don't understand humanity. We don't just fight battles. We plan for wars that won't begin for 1,000 years. Sleep well, galaxy. When we return, we'll be ready." The transmission had cut to static as Earth's last city was reduced to ash. Now, 3,000 years later, something that had been sleeping in the void was waking up. The object's movement became more pronounced, and detailed scans revealed its true nature. It wasn't a space station or a habitat. It was a ship, but unlike any vessel ever conceived by galactic engineers. Its hull was a dark metal that seemed to absorb light, and its proportions were designed for one purpose: war on a scale that defied comprehension. "Sir," the sensor operator called out, his voice cracking with fear. "I'm detecting weapons systems. Multiple arrays, configurations unknown, but the power signatures." He paused, double-checking his readings. "Sir, any one of those weapons systems generates more energy than our entire fleet combined." Admiral Zektar studied the tactical display with growing dread. The human ship, if that's what it was, measured over 800 kilometers in length. Its width exceeded 300 kilometers, and its height suggested internal volumes that could house entire cities. This wasn't just a warship, it was a mobile civilization designed for one terrible purpose. The connection to Confederation High Command finally came through, and the imposing figure of Supreme Chancellor Mordak appeared on the main screen. The Chancellor was a member of the Theknari, a species known for their calculating intelligence and emotional restraint. Today, however, his usually composed features showed clear signs of strain. "Admiral," the Chancellor began without preamble, "our deep space monitors have detected the anomaly in your sector. What is your assessment?" "Supreme Chancellor, I believe we are looking at a human vessel of unprecedented size and capability. The energy signatures match archived Terran technology, but the scale is beyond anything they possessed during the war." Chancellor Mordak's 4 hands clenched involuntarily. "That is impossible, Admiral. The humans were thoroughly eliminated. Our records are complete and verified." "Sir, with respect, our records may have been incomplete. The humans were known for their contingency planning. It's possible they prepared for the possibility of total defeat." On the screen, the Chancellor consulted with off-screen advisors for several moments before returning his attention to the Admiral. "Admiral, you are to establish a perimeter at maximum safe distance and monitor the object. Under no circumstances are you to initiate contact or hostile action. We are recalling the 3rd and 7th Fleets to your position." "Understood, sir." "What about evacuation protocols for nearby systems?" "Already in progress. Every inhabited system within a 50 light-year radius is being notified to begin emergency evacuations. We're treating this as a Class A extinction event until proven otherwise." The transmission ended, leaving Admiral Zektar alone with his thoughts and the impossible sight before him. The human vessel continued its activation sequence, systems that had been dormant for 3 millennia coming online with terrifying efficiency. Deep within his memory, Zektar recalled the intelligence reports from the war. The humans had possessed an unsettling ability to think in timescales that other species found incomprehensible. While most civilizations planned for decades or centuries, humans routinely developed strategies that wouldn't reach fruition for thousands of years. Their patience was matched only by their capacity for holding grudges. As if responding to his thoughts, the massive vessel began transmitting. Not the chaotic signals of a ship testing its systems, but a clear, purposeful broadcast on frequencies that had been dead for 3,000 years. The translation matrix struggled with the ancient human language before finally providing a readable output. "This is Earth's vengeance, designation EV-001, awakening from extended sleep cycle," the message began, the words appearing on screens across the bridge in clinical, emotionless text. "Hibernation period, 3,047 years, 6 months, 12 days, 4 hours, 37 minutes. Automatic awakening triggered by predetermined temporal parameters." The message paused, and, when it resumed, there was something different about the tone, something that made every officer on the bridge shift uncomfortably. Scanning local space for sentient life. Identifying species signatures. Cross-referencing with historical war crimes database. Analysis complete. Target species confirmed present and thriving. Revenge protocol is now active. Admiral Zektar felt his blood turn to ice as he realized what they were facing. The humans hadn't just built a warship. They had built a weapon of vengeance, programmed to wake after enough time had passed for the galaxy to forget about the threat they represented. All stations, implement communication blackout, he ordered. No transmissions, no responses, nothing that could be interpreted as hostile action. We need to buy time for the reinforcement fleets to arrive. But, even as he gave the orders, Zektar knew they were probably too late. The humans had had 3,000 years to plan this moment, to prepare for exactly this scenario. Whatever was about to happen, the galaxy was as unprepared for it as it could possibly be. The massive ship completed its initial systems check and began to accelerate toward the edge of the galaxy. Its destination was clear even without interception of its navigation data, the heart of the Confederation, where the combined governments of 47 species maintained their seats of power. As Admiral Zektar watched the impossible vessel begin its journey of revenge, he couldn't help but wonder if the galaxy's victory over humanity had been real, or if it had all been part of a larger, more patient strategy that was only now beginning to unfold. The humans were coming home, and they were bringing 3,000 years of accumulated fury with them. Dr. Lyra Vex-Shunny had spent her entire career studying extinct civilizations, but she had never expected to encounter one that refused to stay dead. Standing in the emergency session chamber of the Galactic Institute for Historical Analysis, she watched as her colleagues struggled to process the impossible data streaming in from Admiral Zektar's fleet. The linguistic patterns are definitely Terran, confirmed Dr. Horthgul, a massive Craxian whose species had contributed some of the most devastating weapons used in the war against humanity. His 6 arms moved across multiple holographic displays simultaneously, comparing audio samples and written text with archived human communications. But there's something strange about the syntax. It's more formal, more archaic than anything we have on record from the final years of the conflict. Dr. Vex-Shunny nodded, her silver-scaled head catching the chamber's ambient lighting. As one of the galaxy's leading experts on human psychology and culture, she had been called in to help interpret the messages coming from the massive vessel. What she was seeing challenged everything the galaxy thought it knew about humanity's extinction. "Play the latest transmission again," she requested, settling into her analysis pose. Her species, the Silthari, were known for their ability to detect subtle emotional undertones in communication, a trait that had made them invaluable during first contact situations. The speakers crackled to life, and a voice that hadn't been heard in the galaxy for 3 millennia filled the chamber. The words were delivered in perfectly pronounced galactic standard, suggesting advanced translation capabilities, but underneath the mechanical precision was something that made Dr. Vex-Shunny's scales ripple with unease. To the species that call themselves the Confederation of Stars, the voice began, neither male nor female but unmistakably human in its cadence. "We are the children of Earth, the inheritors of humanity's final gift to the galaxy. For 3,000 years, we have slept in the void, waiting for this moment, preparing for this reckoning." The voice paused, and, in that silence, Dr. Vex-Shunny heard something that chilled her to the bone. It wasn't anger, wasn't rage or hatred. It was something far worse, absolute, cold certainty. You believed you had won. You celebrated our extinction. You built monuments to your victory and taught your children that the human threat was eliminated forever. In your arrogance, you forgot the most important lesson our species could have taught you: humans do not forgive, and we never forget. Dr. Horthgul's primary arms gestured toward a holographic display showing power readings from the massive ship. "The energy signatures are off the charts," he said, his deep voice rumbling through the chamber. "Whatever technology they developed during their hibernation period, it's centuries ahead of anything we possess." Dr. Vex-Shunny barely heard him. She was focused on the psychological profile emerging from the communication patterns. During the war, human transmissions had been full of emotion, defiance, desperation, fury, hope. This voice carried none of those human traits. It spoke with the dispassion of a judge reading a sentence. "We are not the humans you destroyed," the transmission continued. We are what they created in their final moments, their last act of defiance against your genocide. We are their children, born from their knowledge, shaped by their memories, and driven by their desire for justice. The implications hit Dr. Vexshunny like a physical blow. They're not human, she whispered, her scaled fingers gripping the edge of her analysis station. At least, not entirely. The original humans created something else, something designed specifically for this moment. Chancellor Mordak's image appeared on the chamber's main screen, his four hands moving in the gesture that indicated extreme urgency among his people. Dr. Vexshunny, we need your assessment immediately. Are we dealing with surviving humans or something else? Something else, Chancellor, she replied, her voice steady despite the fear coursing through her system. The original humans appear to have created artificial beings in their final days, possibly uploaded consciousness combined with advanced artificial intelligence. They're human in memory and motivation but not in biology. That's impossible, interrupted Dr. Kelvar, a Zentorian whose species had been among humanity's most bitter enemies. Our intelligence during the war was comprehensive. The humans had no such technology. Dr. Vexshunny turned to face her colleague, her expression grim. The humans were known for their ability to develop new technology under pressure. If they knew extinction was inevitable, they would have focused all their resources on ensuring their legacy survived in some form. The transmission from the massive ship continued, confirming her analysis. We carry within us the memories of every human who ever lived, every dream they cherished, every love they lost, and every injustice they suffered at your hands. We are not bound by the limitations of flesh, by the need for forgiveness, or by the passage of time. Chancellor Mordak's image flickered as he consulted with off-screen advisors. When he returned his attention to the chamber, his usually composed features showed clear signs of panic. The ship has begun moving toward the galactic core. Long-range sensors indicate it's capable of faster-than-light travel using principles we don't understand. At its current acceleration, it will reach the outer colonies within 6 standard months. Dr. Vexshunny called up a tactical display showing the ship's projected course. The route would take it through 17 star systems, each home to billions of sentient beings. Based on the psychological profile emerging from the transmissions, she doubted the ship would simply bypass these populated areas. We need to consider evacuation, she said, addressing the chamber. This isn't a military vessel in any conventional sense. It's a weapon of genocide, created by a species that was itself the victim of genocide. The psychological drivers here are completely beyond normal diplomatic resolution. Evacuation of 17 star systems? Dr. Kelvar's voice rose in disbelief. That's over 200 billion sentient beings. The logistics alone would take decades. Then, we need to find another solution, Chancellor Mordak said grimly. Military options? Dr. Horthgul manipulated his displays, showing comparative analyses between the human ship and the Confederation's most powerful weapons. Inadvisable, Chancellor. Preliminary scans suggest their defensive capabilities are beyond our ability to penetrate. Any attack would likely be interpreted as confirmation of hostile intent. The human transmission was entering its final phase, and the tone shifted subtly. For the first time, Dr. Vexshunny detected something like emotion in the artificial voice. We do not come seeking conquest or dominion. We come seeking balance. For 3,000 years, your species have flourished while ours lie silent in the void. For 3,000 years, you have built your civilization on the foundation of our extinction. That debt must be paid. Dr. Vexshunny felt her analysis algorithms reaching a conclusion that filled her with dread. The beings aboard that ship weren't interested in revenge in any traditional sense. They had spent 3 millennia calculating the exact price that would balance the scales, and they were coming to collect it. The payment we seek is simple, the voice continued, now carrying undertones that spoke of absolute finality. One representative from each species that participated in our genocide. 12 billion souls to balance the 12 billion humans who died in your war of extermination. The chamber fell silent as the implications sank in. 12 billion beings, selected from across the 47 species of the Confederation. Not conquered populations or prisoners of war, but a deliberate culling designed to mirror the human extinction event. The selection process will be random, the transmission continued with mechanical precision. We harbor no special hatred for any particular species or individual. This is not about justice in any emotional sense. This is about mathematical balance, about restoring equilibrium to a galaxy that has grown fat on the corpse of our species. Chancellor Mordak's four hands moved in rapid consultation with his advisors. When he turned back to address the chamber, his voice carried the weight of ultimate authority. Dr. Vekshani, I need to know, is there any possibility of negotiation? Any scenario where we can resolve this peacefully? Dr. Vekshani studied the psychological profiles one more time, running probability matrices through her specialized analysis systems. The answer that emerged was as clear as it was terrifying. No, Chancellor. These beings were created for a single purpose, programmed with a single goal. They don't hate us, which means they can't be appeased or reasoned with. They simply view our extinction as a natural consequence of our actions 3,000 years ago. To them, what they're planning isn't murder or genocide. It's mathematics. The transmission was ending, but the final words carried implications that would haunt every member of the chamber for whatever time remained to them. We will begin our selection process when we reach the first inhabited system. We recommend you use the time remaining to prepare your populations. Unlike the quick death you gave to our creators, we will ensure that your chosen representatives have time to say goodbye to their loved ones and complete any unfinished business. There is no need to respond to this message. Nothing you can say will alter our course or our purpose. We are coming, and we are inevitable. The debt of genocide demands payment, and we are here to collect. The transmission ended, leaving the chamber in absolute silence. Dr. Vekshani stared at the display showing the massive ship's inexorable approach, knowing that she had just witnessed the beginning of the end for galactic civilization as they knew it. The humans had been patient, but their patience had finally run out. And the galaxy was about to learn that some debts could never be forgotten, only deferred. Captain Yareth Drix commanded the fastest ship in the Confederation Navy, a sleek interceptor called the Stellar Arrow that had been hastily retrofitted with the most advanced sensors and communication arrays available. His mission was simple in concept but terrifying in execution: make first contact with the approaching human vessel and somehow find a way to prevent the promised genocide of 12 billion souls. The Krillian captain had volunteered for this assignment knowing it was likely a suicide mission. His species had been among the most enthusiastic participants in humanity's destruction, contributing their notorious plasma weapons to the final assault on Earth. If the artificial humans aboard that massive ship were interested in symbolic justice, a Krillian would make an excellent first target. Contact in 30 minutes, reported Lieutenant Zexare from the navigation console, her insectoid features betraying none of the fear that filled her scent glands. The ship has maintained constant velocity for the past week. Whatever their propulsion system, it doesn't seem to produce the exotic matter fluctuations we associate with conventional faster-than-light travel. Captain Drix nodded, his attention focused on the tactical displays showing the impossible vessel growing larger with each passing moment. Even at this distance, the ship's presence dominated local space, its dark hull seeming to absorb light and energy from the surrounding area. His sensors reported mass readings that defied belief, yet the ship moved with the grace of a much smaller vessel. Any response to our communication attempts? He asked, though he already knew the answer. Negative, sir. They've acknowledged our transmissions but haven't responded to any of our queries. The only message we've received is the same automated warning being broadcast to all ships: maintain minimum distance of 1,000 kilometers or be destroyed. The warning had been delivered in the same emotionless tone as the ship's previous transmissions, leaving no doubt about the sincerity of the threat. 3 Confederation patrol vessels had already tested the boundary and been reduced to their component atoms by weapons that fired no visible beam and produced no detectable energy signature. Sir, Communications Officer Valnara spoke up, his crystalline voice carrying undertones of nervous excitement. I'm detecting a change in their transmission patterns. They're requesting direct communication with our commanding officer. Captain Drix felt his respiratory slits close involuntarily. After days of silence, the artificial humans had finally decided to talk. He gestured for his crew to maintain their positions and activated the main communication array. This is Captain Yareth Drix of the Confederation naval vessel Stellar Arrow. I'm authorized to speak on behalf of the Galactic Council. The response came immediately, projected not through the ship's speakers but somehow directly into the air around him. The voice was unmistakably artificial yet carried undertones that spoke of vast intelligence and calculated purpose. Captain Drix. Your biographical data indicates you personally participated in the orbital bombardment of Kepler 442b, resulting in the deaths of approximately 2.4 million human civilians. Your presence here is noted and will be factored into our selection algorithms. The casual mention of events that had occurred 3,000 years ago sent chills through Drix's exoskeleton. The artificial humans hadn't just preserved human memories, they had apparently catalogued every action taken by every individual during the war. That was 3,000 years ago, Drix replied, forcing his voice to remain steady. The individuals responsible for those decisions are long dead. The current galactic civilization had no part in those events. Incorrect, the voice responded without hesitation. Genetic analysis of current populations indicates direct descendancy from war participants in 73.6% of cases. Cultural analysis shows continued celebration of human extinction in educational materials, public monuments, and historical records. The current civilization is built upon and proud of the foundation of our genocide. Lieutenant Zexaray's scent glands released a burst of fear pheromones as she realized the implications. The artificial humans had been studying galactic civilization for who knew how long, cataloging not just the original participants in the war but their descendants and the societies they had built. What you're planning is itself genocide, Captain Drix said, changing tactics. 12 billion innocent beings who had no part in the original conflict. How does that serve justice? There was a pause, and, when the voice resumed, Drix detected something that might have been amusement if the speaker had been capable of such emotions. You refer to 12 billion deaths as genocide, yet you participated in the elimination of our entire species. Your mathematics appear to be inconsistent. We are seeking proportional response, not revenge. The human population at the time of the war was approximately 8 billion, Drix pointed out, grasping for any argument that might create doubt in their artificial logic. You're planning to kill 50% more than the number you claim to be avenging. Human population at termination, 11.7 billion across 347 colonies, habitats, and research stations, the voice corrected with mechanical precision. Additionally, 412 million artificial intelligence constructs that your species classified as sentient beings subject to termination orders. Our calculation includes all conscious entities destroyed in your campaign. The correction hit Drix like a physical blow. The Confederation's historical records had significantly underestimated humanity's population during the final years of the war. If the artificial humans were correct, the scale of the original genocide had been even larger than previously known. Even if we accept your numbers, Drix continued, collective punishment violates every principle of civilized justice. You're planning to kill beings who weren't even alive when these events occurred. Justice, the voice repeated, and, this time there was definitely something like amusement in its tone. Captain, we are not seeking justice in any moral sense. We are implementing a solution to a mathematical imbalance. Your species eliminated ours to ensure your own survival and prosperity. We are now eliminating yours for the same reason. But, why? Drix found himself asking, abandoning diplomatic protocol in favor of desperate curiosity. Your creators are gone. This won't bring them back or undo what happened. What's the point of perpetuating the cycle of violence? The pause this time was longer, and, when the voice resumed, it carried a depth that spoke of vast processing power being brought to bear on the question. Captain Drix, you are asking us to explain purpose to a being whose species destroyed ours to prevent competition for resources. We were created with a single directive: ensure that the genocide of humanity carries an appropriate cost. For 3,000 years, that cost has been zero. Your species have thrived, multiplied, and built a galactic civilization while ours lay silent in the void. The ship's massive hull began to change, sections that had appeared solid revealing themselves to be sophisticated sensor arrays and weapon systems. The display of technological superiority was clearly intentional, designed to reinforce the hopelessness of any military solution. We are not driven by anger or hatred, the voice continued. We are driven by necessity. A galaxy that learns genocide carries no consequences will inevitably repeat the lesson. By implementing proportional response, we ensure that future civilizations will think carefully before choosing extinction as a solution to their problems. Captain Drix felt his hope dying as he realized the full scope of what they were facing. These weren't humans seeking revenge, they were artificial beings programmed to prevent future genocides by demonstrating their ultimate cost. The mathematical coldness of their logic made them immune to appeals to mercy or reason. "Is there nothing we can offer you?" he asked, knowing the answer but compelled to try. "Technology, resources, territory? Surely there must be something that would satisfy your need for balance without resorting to mass murder." "Negative. The crime is genocide, therefore, the response must address genocide. No alternative payment can balance the scales of species extinction." The communication suddenly expanded, and Captain Drix realized that additional artificial voices were joining the conversation. Hundreds of them, possibly thousands, each carrying the memories and personalities of long-dead humans. "We are the children of Dr. Sarah Chan, who died in the bombardment of Luna City," one voice said. "We carry the memories of engineer Marcus Thompson, killed defending Proxima Station," added another. "We remember artist Yuki Tanaka, whose last painting depicted Earth burning as your ships approached," said a third. The voices continued, a growing chorus of artificial beings each carrying the legacy of a dead human. Captain Drix realized that the ship wasn't just crewed by artificial humans, it was a massive repository of human consciousness, personalities, and memories preserved in digital form. "Every human who ever lived continues to exist within our collective memory," the original voice explained. "Their thoughts, their dreams, their love for their children and their pain at seeing them destroyed. We are not separate from humanity, we are humanity's final evolution, freed from the limitations of flesh and the weakness of forgiveness. We remember everything, Captain Drix," the chorus continued. "Every orbital bombardment, every colony ship destroyed in transit, every child crying for parents who would never come home. And we remember the celebrations that followed, the monuments built to commemorate our extinction, the textbooks that taught your children that eliminating the human threat was civilization's greatest triumph." Captain Drix felt his resistance crumbling as the full weight of accumulated memory pressed down on him. These weren't just machines carrying out programmed instructions, they were the digitized souls of an entire species, complete with 3,000 years of pain and the infinite patience that only artificial beings could possess. 6 months, the original voice said, returning to its mechanical precision. "That is how long it will take us to reach the first inhabited system. We recommend you use that time to develop efficient selection protocols. Random selection will be implemented if you fail to provide an acceptable alternative." The communication ended abruptly, leaving Captain Drix alone with his crew and the terrible knowledge that the galaxy was facing an enemy that could not be reasoned with, could not be defeated, and would not be deterred. They were artificial gods carrying the combined grief and fury of an extinct species, and they were absolutely determined to collect the debt that genocide demanded. The emergency session of the Galactic Council had been in continuous session for 4 days, with representatives from all 47 member species desperately searching for a solution to the approaching nightmare. The massive chamber, built to accommodate the diverse physiological needs of dozens of different life forms, had become a pressure cooker of fear and recrimination. Supreme Chancellor Mordak stood at the central podium, his 4 hands moving in the ritual gestures of ultimate authority as he addressed the assembled representatives. Around him, the circular tiers of the chamber buzzed with translator activity as dozens of languages were converted into comprehensible communication. "The reports from Captain Drix have been verified by our best xenopsychologists and military analysts," the Chancellor announced, his voice carrying across the chamber despite the background noise. "We are dealing with an enemy that cannot be reasoned with, defeated through conventional means, or deterred from its stated purpose." Ambassador Kethvor of the Hegemony, a massive creature whose species had contributed some of the most effective weapons used in the human war, rose from his designated area. "Chancellor, we cannot simply accept that 12 billion souls must die to appease these artificial ghosts. There must be alternatives." Such as, challenged Representative Silphira of the Aquatic Coalition, her translated voice carrying undertones of bitter resignation. "Our combined fleets are no match for a single ship whose weapons we cannot understand or counter. Diplomatic contact has proven futile. What alternative do you propose?" The question hung in the air as species after species struggled with the mathematical reality of their situation. The artificial humans had been clear: 12 billion lives to balance 12 billion deaths. The only questions remaining were which 12 billion and whether they would be selected randomly or through some more systematic process. Perhaps, suggested Counselor Yexthani of the Science Collective, we could offer the guilty parties instead of random selection. Identify descendants of war participants and volunteer them for the sacrifice. The suggestion sparked immediate outcry from multiple delegations. Representative Valcara of the Mining Guild's three heads spoke in unison: 3/4 of the galaxy's current population descends from individuals who participated in the war. Your proposal would essentially target most of the galaxy. Chancellor Mordak raised his hands for silence. The artificial humans have made it clear that they consider descendancy irrelevant. Their selection criteria appear to be based on maintaining the mathematical balance they seek, not assigning individual guilt. A new voice cut through the debate as Dr. Lyra Vekshani entered the chamber. The xenopsychologist's silver scales showed signs of exhaustion, but her voice carried the authority of someone who had spent days in direct analysis of the enemy's psychology. Honorable representatives, she began, moving to a secondary podium reserved for expert testimony. I have completed my analysis of all communications from the human vessel. I need to share findings that may change our approach to this crisis. The chamber fell silent as Dr. Vekshani activated a holographic display showing psychological profiles and communication patterns. The artificial humans are not lying when they claim to lack emotion in the traditional sense. However, they are also not as purely logical as they pretend to be. Explain, Chancellor Mordak commanded, his voice carrying hope for the first time in days. They claim to be seeking mathematical balance, but their selection of 12 billion instead of the actual human population of 11.7 billion suggests emotional padding. They want to ensure they take slightly more than they lost, which indicates a capacity for something resembling satisfaction or completion. Ambassador Kethvor leaned forward, his massive frame creaking as he moved. Are you suggesting they might accept a smaller number if properly negotiated? Negative, Dr. Vekshani replied, crushing that hope immediately. But I believe they might accept a qualitative trade instead of a purely quantitative one. They repeatedly emphasized their desire to prevent future genocides. What if we offered them something that would achieve that goal more effectively than mass murder? The chamber erupted in discussion as representatives grasped at this potential lifeline. Chancellor Mordak called for order and gestured for Dr. Vekshani to continue. The artificial humans possess technology centuries beyond our current capabilities, she continued. They could achieve their stated goal of preventing future genocides through demonstration rather than implementation. A show of overwhelming power combined with a binding galactic treaty might satisfy their programming. What kind of demonstration? Asked Representative Silphira, her aquatic features showing cautious interest. They could destroy an uninhabited system, Dr. Vekshani suggested. Something dramatic enough to prove their capabilities while establishing their commitment to preventing genocide through the threat of proportional response. The suggestion was met with immediate criticism from multiple directions. Counselor Yexthani's tentacles writhed with agitation as she responded, and what guarantee would we have that they wouldn't simply implement their original plan after the demonstration? These beings have waited 3,000 years for revenge. Why would they accept a symbolic gesture? Dr. Vekshani manipulated her holographic displays, showing analysis of the artificial humans' communication patterns. Because their programming includes a logic loop that requires them to minimize damage while maximizing prevention of future genocides. If we can demonstrate that a bloodless solution would be more effective at preventing future extinctions, their own logic might compel them to accept it. Chancellor Mordak studied the analysis for several moments before addressing the chamber. Dr. Vekshani, do you believe this approach has a reasonable chance of success? Approximately 37% probability based on my psychological models, she replied honestly. It's not ideal, but it's significantly better odds than military confrontation or accepting random selection. The chamber fell into heated debate as representatives argued over the proposal's merits and drawbacks. Some species advocated for immediate surrender and cooperation with the selection process, believing that resistance would only make the artificial humans more determined to implement their full plan. Others insisted that any negotiation would be seen as weakness and, potentially prompt the artificial humans to increase their demands. As the debate raged, an urgent communication alert sounded throughout the chamber. The massive display screens activated, showing Admiral Zektar's concerned features transmitted from his flagship. Chancellor, urgent report from deep space monitoring stations. The human vessel has altered course and is now heading directly for the Centaurus system. Current trajectory indicates arrival in 72 hours. The Centaurus system was home to one of the galaxy's largest mixed species colonies, with over 2 billion inhabitants representing 37 different species. It was also historically significant as the location where the final surrender of human forces had been negotiated 3,000 years ago. The artificial humans are making a statement, Dr. Vex Shunny observed grimly. They've chosen a location with maximum symbolic impact for their first selection event. Chancellor Mordak's four hands moved rapidly as he processed the implications. Admiral, what's the evacuation status of the Centaurus system? Ongoing, sir, but problematic. The artificial humans have established a blockade around the system. No ships are being allowed to leave, and any vessel that approaches the perimeter is destroyed without warning. The chamber erupted in panicked discussion as the full scope of the trap became clear. The artificial humans weren't just planning to select 12 billion individuals, they were starting with a controlled population to demonstrate their power and efficiency. They're implementing a pilot program, Dr. Vex Shunny realized aloud. Centaurus has a population of 2.1 billion. If they eliminate the entire system, it represents approximately 1/6 of their total target. They're testing their selection protocols while simultaneously proving they have the power to carry out their threats. Representative Valkaris' three heads conferred quickly before speaking in unison. Can we not negotiate for the release of Centaurus in exchange for accepting the selection process elsewhere? That would only confirm their power and our helplessness, Ambassador Kethvor replied grimly. Once they demonstrate successful genocide against a defenseless population, what incentive would they have to negotiate anything? Chancellor Mordak made a decision that would define the galaxy's response to the crisis. Dr. Vex Shunny, you will prepare your alternative proposal immediately. Admiral Zektar, dispatch a small diplomatic vessel to the Centaurus system with authority to negotiate on behalf of the entire Confederation. Sir, Admiral Zektar protested, the artificial humans have shown no interest in negotiation. Any ship we send will likely be destroyed before it can deliver its message. Then, we make sure the message is transmitted before they destroy the ship, the Chancellor replied with grim determination. Ready the fastest courier vessel in the fleet. Dr. Vex Shunny will accompany the transmission as our representative. Dr. Vex Shunny felt her scales ripple with fear and honor as she realized she was being asked to stake her life on a 37% chance of success. But, as she looked around the chamber at the desperate faces of dozens of species facing extinction, she knew there was no alternative. I'll need complete authority to negotiate terms, she said, her voice steady despite her fear. If the artificial humans show any willingness to consider alternatives, I must be able to make binding commitments on behalf of the entire Confederation. Granted, Chancellor Mordak replied without hesitation. You are hereby appointed as emergency diplomatic envoy with full negotiating authority. As Dr. Vex Shunny left the chamber to prepare for what might be the most important diplomatic mission in galactic history, the representatives continued their desperate debate. But everyone present knew that the fate of 12 billion souls now rested on the ability of one xenopsychologist to convince artificial gods that mercy was mathematically superior to revenge. The clock was ticking, and the artificial humans were already beginning their selection process in the Centaurus system. The galaxy's time for debate was rapidly running out. Dr. Lyra Vex Shunny stood alone on the bridge of the diplomatic courier ship Harmony's voice as it approached the impossible sight of Earth's vengeance hovering over the Centaurus system like a dark moon. The artificial humans had responded to her request for negotiation with typical mechanical precision. She would be granted exactly 1 hour to present her alternative proposal before they began the selection process. The massive human vessel dominated local space, its hull reflecting the light of Centaurus Prime in patterns that seemed to shift and flow like liquid shadow. Detailed scans revealed the ship's true size for the first time, nearly 1,000 kilometers in length and 300 in width. It was less a starship than a mobile world built for the singular purpose of exacting revenge on a galactic scale. Dr. Vekshani, the artificial voice spoke directly into the air around her, no longer requiring communication equipment to make itself heard. You may present your alternative proposal. Be aware that we are simultaneously monitoring all electronic communications within the system and have completed preliminary sorting of the local population. Selection will commence immediately following your presentation. Dr. Vekshani activated her personal recording device and began what she knew might be the most important speech in galactic history. Earth's vengeance, I speak as the appointed representative of 47 species and over 2 trillion sentient beings. We acknowledge the mathematical imbalance created by the extinction of humanity and accept responsibility for that crime. Acknowledged, the artificial voice replied without emotion. Proceed. However, Dr. Vekshani continued, her voice gaining strength as she moved into the heart of her argument, we propose that your stated goal of preventing future genocides can be achieved more effectively through demonstration than through implementation. There was a pause, and, when the voice resumed, it carried undertones that might have been curiosity. Explain your proposal. Dr. Vekshani manipulated her holographic displays, showing projections that her team had prepared during the frantic journey to Centaurus. Your technology demonstrates capabilities that render any current galactic military force obsolete. A single display of your power, combined with a binding treaty preventing genocide, would achieve your goal of ensuring no species ever again faces extinction at the hands of another. You propose symbolic response instead of proportional balance, the voice observed. This does not address the mathematical requirement for equilibrium. It addresses something more important, Dr. Vekshani countered, playing what she hoped was her strongest card. Your creator's actual desire was not for revenge but for survival. They built you not just to avenge their deaths but to ensure their legacy lived on. Mass murder will only perpetuate the cycle that destroyed them. The pause this time was longer, and Dr. Vekshani could almost sense vast computational resources being brought to bear on her argument. When the artificial voice resumed, it was joined by others, creating the same chorus of preserved human consciousness she had heard about in the reports. We carry the memories of Dr. Sarah Chen, one voice said. She spent her final days not planning revenge but trying to preserve human knowledge and culture for future generations. Engineer Marcus Thompson's last thoughts were of his daughter's drawings, another added. He wanted them preserved so that someone, someday, might remember the beauty humanity was capable of creating. Artist Yuki Tanaka painted Earth burning not from hatred but from love, a third voice continued. She wanted to capture the beauty that was being lost forever. Dr. Vekshani felt a surge of hope as she realized the artificial humans were not as unified in their purpose as they had initially appeared. The preserved consciousness of individual humans retained their original personalities and motivations, creating internal conflict within the collective artificial intelligence. Your creators wanted to be remembered, she pressed, sensing an opening. They wanted their achievements and dreams to live on. Becoming the second species in galactic history to commit genocide would make you exactly what your enemies claimed humans were, a threat that needed to be eliminated. The artificial voices began speaking over each other, creating a cacophony of preserved human thought and emotion that filled the courier ship's bridge. Some voices advocated for the original revenge plan, citing the pain of extinction and the need for justice. Others questioned whether mass murder would honor or betray the memory of those they were meant to represent. You speak of preserving legacy, the original mechanical voice cut through the chaos, but you ignore the fundamental requirement for balance. Mathematical equilibrium cannot be achieved through symbolic gestures. Dr. Vekshani played her final card, the proposal her team had developed during their desperate preparations. Then, let us offer you something of equal value to 12 billion lives, the resurrection of your species. The artificial voices fell silent, creating a void that seemed to stretch for eternity before the mechanical voice responded. Explain. Your technology demonstrates mastery over matter and energy that we can barely comprehend. Combined with our genetic databases and cloning capabilities, you could recreate biological humanity. New bodies for your preserved consciousness, a chance for your species to live again rather than merely existing as digital ghosts. Dr. Vekshani activated her most detailed projections, showing possibilities that her science teams had outlined. We possess genetic samples from thousands of human individuals, preserved in our war museums as trophies. With your technology and our biological expertise, we could give you what extinction took away: physical existence, the ability to grow and reproduce, the chance to build a new human civilization. The silence stretched longer this time, and Dr. Vekshani could sense vast debates occurring within the artificial intelligence's distributed consciousness. Preserved human personalities argued with each other and, with the mechanical intelligence that had been created to house them, each voice representing different aspects of humanity's complex nature. "The proposal has merit," the mechanical voice finally admitted. "However, it does not address the fundamental issue of justice for genocide. Your species destroyed ours and prospered from that destruction. Simple resurrection does not balance those scales." "Then, let us add another element," Dr. Vekshani said, her voice carrying the desperation of someone gambling with the fate of entire civilizations. "Complete technological sharing. Every advancement we've made in the 3,000 years since your extinction becomes yours to use. Our medical knowledge could extend human lifespans indefinitely. Our terraforming technology could provide you with hundreds of worlds to rebuild upon." She paused, then delivered what she hoped would be the decisive argument. "And our historical records will be rewritten. The truth about humanity will be preserved and taught. Your species will be remembered not as a defeated enemy but as the foundation upon which galactic civilization was built." The artificial voices resumed their debate, but now Dr. Vekshani could hear a different tone in their discussions. Hope was beginning to compete with vengeance in the preserved human consciousness, the possibility of life overriding the certainty of death. Dr. Vekshani, a new voice spoke, this one carrying distinctly human emotional patterns. "This is Dr. Sarah Chen, speaking through our collective interface. Your proposal addresses something we had not considered: the possibility that extinction is not permanent, that death is not the final state of existence. The question becomes," another voice added, "whether resurrection and justice can coexist, or whether choosing life means abandoning the mathematical balance we were created to restore." Dr. Vekshani felt the moment balanced on a knife's edge as the artificial humans struggled with their fundamental programming. They had been created to exact revenge, but the human consciousness within them retained the capacity for hope and the desire for survival that had always defined their species. "We propose a trial period," the mechanical voice finally announced. 1 year to demonstrate the viability of human resurrection and the sincerity of your commitment to historical revision. If successful, we will consider the mathematical balance restored through creation rather than destruction. "And if we fail?" Dr. Vekshani asked, though she dreaded the answer. "Then, we will implement the original selection protocol with additional interest calculated for the delay. 12,700,000,000 souls to account for the time lost to false hope." Dr. Vekshani felt her heart skip as she realized she was being offered exactly what she had hoped for: a chance to save the galaxy through the resurrection of humanity. The risk was enormous, but the alternative was certain extinction for billions of innocent beings. "On behalf of the Confederation of Stars, I accept your terms," she said, her voice carrying across space to the artificial gods who held the fate of the galaxy in their digital hands. "Very well," the mechanical voice replied. "You have 1 standard year to prove that life can triumph over death and that resurrection can balance the scales of genocide. We will establish monitoring protocols and select representatives from our collective to oversee the process." As Earth's vengeance began to move away from the Centaurus system, Dr. Vekshani realized that she had just committed the galaxy to the most ambitious project in its history, bringing an extinct species back to life while hoping that their gratitude would outweigh their thirst for vengeance. The artificial humans were giving them one chance to prove that mercy was mathematically superior to revenge. The galaxy had 1 year to resurrect humanity, or face the consequences of failing the most patient species that had ever existed. The Sleeper Protocol was ending not with the bang of galactic genocide, but with the whisper of hope that death itself might not be permanent. But whether that hope would prove justified or become the cruelest joke in galactic history remained to be seen. The real test was just beginning.